Hi, welcome to Lockbox Lunatics. I'm Chad Kamp here in Chandler, Arizona. I've got my trusty cohort, Steve Lambert.
What's happening, Chad? How you doing today, man?
Doing well yourself?
Doing okay. It's a beautiful sunny day here and it's winter time, so I'm pleased with that. I think it's going to be like 50 today, so shorts and t-shirts. Beach weather. No, good day today. Excited for this new year and all the things that are going on. How about you?
Yeah. We're doing well. Things are starting to bustle a little bit down here. We were just recently talking about open houses.
Yeah.
And I noticed myself when I held an open house last weekend that I had a lot of transplants that were coming through open houses. So
hmm
a lot of individuals relocating. And so we were discussing some of the complexities of relocating and some of the benefits that agents can obtain by working with relocations,
Yeah.
as well as the benefit to the consumer. So are you and you were saying in your area you were starting to see some sort of movement as well from the buyers?
Yeah, this last weekend, it's like all of a sudden New Year, just open houses, which had been just crickets for I've been calling agents all over the place. How was your open house? Oh, it's dead, dead, dead. This last weekend, oh my gosh, people coming out of the woodwork. It was like just people were showing up. All of our open houses did very, very well. And we're seeing a lot of the same thing too, because we have several large employers up here within the nuclear energy industry, and a lot of them have job offers out. So we see a lot of people coming into our area right now through relocations. But just the general air or feeling within the marketplace just feels all of a sudden like buyers are like, "Hey, it's time to go. It's time to buy houses." Very encouraging start to the new year, so I'm pleased with that. But yeah, relocations are an interesting one, aren't they? And it's something that is kind of like a mystery behind it a little bit. You don't hear a lot about it. I worked for a company back in my corporate days when they said, "Hey, we're going to move you," and there's a relocation company, and I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" And they call you and they're like, "Oh no, we're going to take care of your other house. We're going to get it all listed, and you're going to get we're going to talk to your lender so you can do this bridge loan thing that we're going to do, so you can go buy a house here, and you don't have to worry about this and all this other stuff." And if your house doesn't close, so it was all this stuff going on in the background, and all I know is it was great. Moving truck shows up, and I get to go pick out a house. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of people getting into real estate don't realize that. And I'm thinking new year, a lot of people are thinking maybe they'll do career changes. And something that we don't always talk about a lot with agents when they're looking at real estate is, yeah, you can represent buyers, you can represent sellers, you can represent investors, but also there's a nice little subcategory in there with the relocation side of it, right? And getting
Right.
involved in those relocation companies. And so you've had a lot of experience with this. You have a huge market compared to us. I'm sure you get a lot more. But so what have some of your experiences been, or what would you kind of think about relocations?
Yeah, so down here in the valley, we've got a lot of tech companies, so there's a lot of movement. I met just last weekend in our open house folks that were moving from Washington, Idaho, and they were being brought down here from for different tech companies down here.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, and so the nice thing is there's pros and cons to everything, right? So you've got good relocation companies, you've got bad ones, you've got good agents, you've got bad ones, right?
Yeah.
And so the most times when an employer seeks out a relocation company, they're wanting to give a benefit to their employee
hmm
to help encourage them to move on. And so some of those benefits, are they'll take care of when they move down here some temporary housing. They'll help cover closing costs on the sale and the purchase. And so a lot of, or at least the relocation company gets it set up in that manner.
Yeah.
And so, it's a benefit to the employee to be able to make that move and make that transition for their family. Now, the relocation companies, they'll reach out to different industries, like you had mentioned, the lenders, eight realtors as well, and
hmm
with agents to try and get things set up to sell their property where they're currently at, help find housing for the new location. So, but yeah, we run into it quite a bit. Man, I'm just stuttering. I feel
You
like
know what? It's all right. I promise you, folks. He's not day drinking.
yeah.
He didn't have anything. We had a nice conversation prior to this. He's in good shape. But if you try and say relocation fast 5 or 6 times
I
in a
think
row,
that's the problem.
it catches up to you. It catches up to you.
That's all, folks. Uh, But
But no,
yeah,
you're
no. So
yeah.
anyway, these different companies, or relocation companies, they have different benefits.
Let's just call them relo companies.
Relo
Let's just take the
companies.
cation out.
Yeah, let's just take the cation out. But we
Let's
do
just keep it
experience
with
that.
vacation, but not relocation.
Right, right.
Okay.
So we do run into quite a bit of the relocations to help individuals, make that transition here.
Yeah.
And some of those benefits, folks think that the benefits of some of the fees are coming from the relocation company and from their employer. And the reality of it, this is one of the cons to working with a relocation company as an agent, is typically there's a referral. And generally that referral can be pretty hefty. Now you've got to look
Yeah.
at what's going to be gained by the consumer, and how much is going to be kept by the relocation company to determine whether or not it's a benefit, to that employee.
Oh yeah, exactly. I've seen them. I've seen some that are more favorable, maybe a 15 to 20% kind of relocation thing, but I've seen them as high as 60%, 40%, 50%. I've seen those happen quite a bit. So you're right. Every company has a little bit of a different approach to that. There's no negotiating on that. I think that's the interesting part. They'll call you and say, "Hey, if you want this client, we're taking 40%. If you don't, we'll just pick up the phone and go to the next agent." So to a certain extent as well, some companies don't really vet the agents out super thoroughly with who they're working with as well. So I think consumers should be aware of that as well. Like, hey, are you finding me a really good agent, or are you just finding me somebody that doesn't do this ever and is just happy to get a deal, right? Because that
Right.
happens too.
And
Um,
and the, and the consumer needs to know that they have a say in whether or not they're going to work with
yes,
somebody.
yeah, they don't
So
have to. Yeah.
yeah, if they have an agent that's not performing, or if they have a lender that's not performing, not looking out for their best interests, or responding, or communicating,
Mhm.
they can go to the relocation company and say, "Hey, look, I want to work with a different agent," and either the relocation company can pull one from their network, or look for a referral from someone that if you know anyone in that market.
Yeah, those clients could actually have the relocation company, and they can say, "Hey, I want to work with Agent Steve or Chad here," and they can go ahead and get us put into their system to be able to
Yeah,
do that. But I think it's like you said, it's kind of a mystery world there a little bit. But relocations are typically, pretty hot at the end of the year, beginning of the year, right? When people are
right,
shifting around, job offers have been made for the new fiscal year, kind of around the fiscal time frame or the calendar time frame, depending on how those companies work with job offers and things like that. But people typically, holidays can be a busy time for relocations because they want to move their kids, get them set up in a new school system, and find a house and get them all dialed in before before it starts, so that there's as minimal disruption. But it's funny, when I got into real estate, I didn't know anything about it, and so I think as new agents, it's just something that they should be aware of. It's a great way to get your name out there and get some business coming in while you're building your business. Um, I know that some people specialize in relocations, and they've made, they do very, very well by just focusing on nothing but relocations, right? And that's kind of their deal. And it's interesting too. A lot of agents don't know this, and maybe clients don't, that there's various levels of vetting for these relocation companies to bring an agent within their ecosystem. So I'm going to use a bigger known name, I guess, in a company called USAA. They're an insurance company, and they're for people that have had ties to the military and their family and so on and so forth. I inquired with them about saying, "Hey, I would like to become. How do I get on your real estate agent panel for our area? So when somebody's coming here, USAA will give them an incentive to work with me by, like you said, covering part of their closing costs, or giving them 0.5% off on their loan or something like that, right? To be within that ecosystem." And I will say this: USAA said I had to fill out an entire application and form. I got all the way to the end of it, and then I had to fly back to San Antonio for 2 days to do full on training. Now I didn't do that because I was like, I don't know how much it's going to pay off because I don't know how many there are. So, anyways, I didn't end up following through with that. But that was pretty intense. That surprised me because I haven't run into that with most other people. But that being said, as a USAA member myself, I know that if I wasn't in real estate, that I could rest assured that whoever that they're going to refer me to has been to their corporate offices and been through their version of, here's how we treat our customers. These are our expectations, right? And I think
right.
that's pretty cool. And they
Yeah,
have
and
other relocation.
USAA, I mean, they're a fine organization. They really do a good job of taking care of the vets.
Yeah,
We were discussing. We have a client. One of my agents has a client that is being relocated here from his employer,
yeah,
So they had referred them to an agent. The agent wasn't performing for them, wasn't really guiding them along the process. And they had found out through a friend that my agent was down here in the valley and he'd take great care of them. And so his first couple interactions with him was like, wow, you're phenomenal. So to get set up with this relocation company, they had no, the only standard they had was, will you pay us a referral? So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
there was no vetting. They really weren't concerned with how long we had been in the industry, how many transactions that we've seen, how well we know the contracts, what the process looks like. It was strictly, will you give us a referral?
And doesn't that kind of blow your mind a little
Yeah,
bit because the company that's hiring that relo company, so the company that's hired this person to move to your area, that has a contract with that relocation company, don't you think that employer would want to know that there's zero vetting for any kind of agent? Like just yeah, just that works. They all we care about is will they take like I'm curious to see. I'd love to be in that meeting, right? I'm the relocation company and I'm doing my pitch to this
right.
corporation to get their business and to say, yeah, we don't vet the agents at all. We just want to make sure that they give us 40%. That's our pitch. They're
Yeah,
it's not right.
yeah, right,
But it's
right.
it's interesting though because I think that's a big that's fascinating to me. Um, about that whole situation. That's
So, so,
very
so a
interesting.
tip for the employers out there that are listening, that are tuning in, if you are looking to start up a relocation package for your employees and you're going to move them across the country, one of the questions you need to ask is how well do you vet and what does the process look like? Can you show me what you do to vet these agents and or
100%.
lenders to ensure that my employee who I'm asking to move for me are taken care of?
Right. Yeah, because I'm sure it's there, but but in practice it doesn't always come through, right? It's kind of
Right.
interesting. It's very, very
And it depends on how good of a salesman, that relocation company has. And they can put, pig on a or lipstick on a pig and call it good, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, with it, like I said, with it being the new year, and we've got, like I said, a lot of people thinking about career changes as well. We kind of hit on that relocation side of it. This is typically the time that I hear from other people and I know you've heard this too. Hey, I've got a friend that's thinking of getting into real estate. They want to make a career change, right? And so I think this is it. This is a good time to be talking about the relocations and things like that because, like I said, it's not something that a lot of people know about. But if you're a new agent, do you think that's a good spot for a new? Because typically new agents are they're kind of fighting for business, right? We're always fighting for business, I guess, not fighting, but looking for business. But they're looking for business to really get their career started and launched and get going because they got all these startup costs. They have nothing in the pipeline,
Right.
so they're kind of building that pipeline. Do you think that's a wise spot for them to go into relocations? Do you think that that's something for them to push hard into?
My thought process on that would be to make sure that you team yourself up with an experienced agent or experienced broker that's going to hold your hand through that process, especially if it's your first transaction. Because typically you're going to have a consumer that has a little bit more experience and they're looking more from that agent for guidance
Hmm.
with regards to where they're going to put their kids into school. Now we can't recommend whether a school is good or bad, right? But we can definitely provide the resources, right, for them to be able to research on their own. We have to be the source of the source, as they say.
Yeah.
And so would say this, that if you are a new agent, it's a great way to start getting your name out there and to start attracting business, to start building your network and your database. But you really need to make sure that you tie yourself to somebody or a brokerage or another experienced agent that's going to help hold your hand and walk you through as well. So I would say that, from a brand new agent's perspective, if that's how you want to build your business, great, but you definitely want to make sure that you have that support because you're going to need to have a little bit more experience to navigate some of the complexities of the relocation.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's a nice adjunct, right? Don't you get some people make it their primary, but it's a great way to backfill.
Right.
And one thing I will say is I think it creates some good habits because most relo companies will require you to do a weekly report to them. In other words, how
Right.
many open houses did you do? How many flyers did you send out? How many people did you show the house to? How are you marketing the property? What kind of return or what are you seeing on that property on the marketing? So I will say that's the one component that I do think is good about on the relo side, where it does create some good habits because it gets these newer agents and even experienced agents that maybe have kind of gotten away from this to look at how they're strategically placing the property, pricing the property, marketing the property, and the activity on the property so that they're truly actively selling a property, right? Um,
Right.
because I think that's something that clients demand more of. And I think that's something that we could take from the relo side of the real estate world and kind of bring over into our everyday side of the world. Because I know a lot of agents don't do that, right? They don't necessarily, they might give their clients a quick text and say, hey, it's been quiet this week, not a whole lot happening, market's doing this, and that's about it. But being able to put a more formalized report together or process together, I think is a good habit to get into. So I think as for those newer agents, I think that could be a benefit to teaching them maybe better habits in terms of staying organized and communicating with their clients. That,
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for agents to start cutting their teeth in real estate.
Mhm.
And there again, they don't know what they don't know, right? And that's why it's so imperative that they find someone that's going to come alongside of them and guide them through that process. Because, you're absolutely 100% correct. There's a lot of agents out there who think that all they've got to do is send a text saying, "Hey, nothing's happened this week."
Yep.
Okay. And so as a consumer is when you say nothing's happened, define nothing's happened.
Right. So you didn't do anything as my agent this week, or the market's not doing anything, or what does that mean, right? It's very vague.
Yeah.
It's what's kind of cool is I spent some time during the holidays here revisiting with some human resources departments in our area, saying, hey, like when you have people relocating, here's why I want to be your go-to agent. And this is something that people can use wherever they are as agents, if they're new or tenured or not. But I put together a 3-page program, basically a 3-page, well, 2 pages introducing how I could be an asset to that process, and then just kind of a 1-pager on the end, just kind of wrapping all that up in terms of benefits to them. And I think what people fail to see is that they can be truly a very good asset when a human resources department is expanding their company and they're on the recruiting trail and they're bringing candidates in to be interviewed. Because as agents, when we're out showing them neighborhoods, maybe looking at some houses, but are just driving them around and letting them get a feel for the area to say, oh, here's where the mall is, here's where some great other shopping is, here's our restaurant district, whatever it is, kind of giving them the lay of the land, that recruit is going to talk to you about a lot of things. And what I found over the years is they'll tell me other companies that are interviewing them, other areas they're looking at, what those other companies are offering for packages, pay, things like that. They're going to tell me, I can just through some questioning, I can find out what they may or may not like about the. So I can go back to the company that has had me do this tour for this recruit and be a strategic partner and say, hey, you're up against company X and company Y and company Z. These are the other areas they're looking at. Here's things that they like. Here's things that they don't like, right? So I can actually be a strategic partner to help them better understand the candidate's needs and maybe tailor a better offer package to that candidate to say, hey, with what you gave us, thank you for giving us that information. We can now offer a better package to this person that's tailored to fit their desires and have a higher opportunity of getting them to come in, which benefits me then because if they come here, then I get to be that agent to sell them a house, help them go find a house and
Right.
sell a house, right?
Right.
So I think that that's where we can dive into those deeper layers of relocation, right? So if you get involved in relocation, how are you going to become an expert within that field, right? Because it can be lucrative, like you said, especially in an area where you have a massive area there and you have a ton of tech firms coming in. There's going to be a lot of people moving down there. So
Oh yeah.
how do you become the go-to? How do you become where a local company there, in Phoenix says, hey, Chad's our guy. We call Chad because for everybody that we hire and they buy houses here, we call Chad. Chad's the dude we work with, and it's because you position yourself as a strategic partner with them, not just an agent looking for a commission, right?
Right.
Two
Yeah,
very
and
different.
it's imperative that you build those relationships with, those in the HAR. And I love that you've, putting a package together and introduce yourself to individuals in the HR department. May not pay off right away, but it's going to pay off, in the future. It's the more that you show your value to them and how you can help improve their company's, culture and their atmosphere
Yeah.
and to help them, increase their productivity, that will come back and be repaid to you in tenfold in
Oh
time.
yeah,
So,
it's not a right now thing. This we're planting the seeds and we're opening the door and we're starting to walk down a path, right? At some point, those paths will converge and they'll ask me to provide those services for them, right? And they love their Bake Me Crazy cookies that went with the package. They enjoyed those tremendously. So,
Well, good. That's another shout out to Bake Me Crazy in Queen Creek, Arizona.
yep, yep. Good
Yep.
stuff, man. Good stuff. Those cookies were amazing. So, but it was, but I was, I, it was funny because I hadn't done that in a few years. And I kind of thought, I want to try some things a little bit differently this year in 26. I want to expand in some different places and kind of get a strategic stronghold in places where I feel that I excel, which is on the business. I'm more of a business agent. So I'm less the touchy feely, let's focus on the colors on the wall guy. I'm more about the numbers guy. And so,
Yeah.
so I'm not everybody's cup of tea that way. I'm like, hey, if I'm helping you buy a house, I look at my first time home buyers like, hey, I'm pushing you, like not pushing, that's not the right word, but maybe I'm saying like I'm putting extra emphasis on this house over these other houses because of where this is, how the neighborhood's changing, or maybe the schools or whatever it is, that this is a solid investment for you that you're going to be able to rent out down the road. So as it goes up in value, you can pull the equity out, buy your next house, and now you're building a rental portfolio, right? You're bringing in
Yeah.
equity and wealth, right? So I'm looking at it like, but not everybody likes that. They're like, Steve, I just want a house. I don't want, I don't want to be a landlord. I'm like, but this is so cool. You have a way to like build wealth.
Yeah.
So I look at,
And I do the same thing. And the only component I have is whenever they say I don't want to be a landlord, I say, fine, I've got a property management company. Let me take over and
that's right,
you step away and I'll just mail you a check every month.
man. I don't know how you do property management. I just do not have the capacity for that. I have no patience for that. I just can't. It's not, I tried at one point for a family member, no less. And I was just like, I'm out. I can't do this, man. I can't do this. Calling me on the weekends, this, not, I already get enough of that with my regular gig.
Well,
I don't need more being piled on, man.
yeah, it's very imperative, and you're business oriented and you understand this. It's about your processes, how you set your process
100%.
to ensure that that phone call's not coming in at midnight when it should have came in at 4 in the afternoon, right?
100%. Yeah. Oh,
Or
yeah.
that the call doesn't even happen anyway. The way I'm set up is everything needs to be run through the portal. And so
That's smart.
I don't get phone calls typically unless if it's a major emergency. But the portal, it tracks everything inbound. I can see exactly how quickly I respond, and I can give that report out to the homeowner saying, "Hey, look, this is how many repair issues that have come in. This is how quickly we've resolved those issues, or how quickly we responded to them." And so it's just another layer
That's
of
cool.
service. Yeah,
No
another
wonder you
layer of
look so
service.
relaxed all the time because most property management people I know look stressed out.
Yeah. Well, and there again, trust me, I've been stressed out. Don't
Well,
get me
that's
wrong.
a whole other issue we can get into. Well, hey man,
Yeah, that's a whole other
we
episode.
don't want to take everybody's time up today, so we're
Yeah.
kind of coming to the end of our time here. So, any parting thoughts on relocations?
Do it. Phoenix is a great area. Come on down. The weather is great. You want to leave Washington?
Hey now, well, I'll sell their house if they want to leave Washington and go down
Yeah,
there.
if you want
So
to leave Washington, contact Steve. If you want to move into
I'll
the
sell
valley,
it. Chad will help you
contact
find a
me.
new one.
That's right.
Problem solved. We're good to
That's
go.
right. Yeah, so just be careful of the package. Make sure that from the consumer's perspective, make sure that you know the package that you're being offered, what they're going to provide, and then from a real estate perspective, just make sure you service those clients because you're the first impression. On the buyer side, you're the first impression of what they can expect in the community, and so we want to leave a good impression. Not only that, we just want to service our clients well, right?
Yeah.
And
So to wrap it, so yeah, so to wrap it up, the professor says, call a professional every single time. Call a professional.
Call professionals. So, hey, we just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and hopefully you learned a little bit about relocation companies. If you have any particular topics that you would like us to cover, drop those in the comments or shoot us an email.
Yep.
But yeah, we look forward to seeing you folks next week, and you guys have a great day.
Awesome. See ya. Have a good one.